Hey Beacon, welcome home to your Bounce Back Blueprint Community podcast, where you are challenged to be, do, and have God's best as you thrive on your journey from setback to success. I'm your Bounce Back guide, Tiffany Huff Struthers, and I'll be guiding you on the journey by sharing tips, tools, and the tea on how I was able to bounce back from escaping death, healing from heartbreak, and finding hope in homelessness. And then I wrote an award-winning book all about it. And shout out to God, ever since I was courageous enough to share my story, my life and the lives of women around the world have been forever changed. And as a member of the Bounce Back Blueprint community, I'm called to teach you to do the same. So grab your journal and let's build this blueprint. Hey Beacon, hey, before we begin building the blueprint this week, I want to be sure to bless you with this week's review. And this week's review is short and sweet, but straight to the point, and it's from the amazing Destiny Asia. And here is what the amazing Destiny Asia has to say. Right on time. This show is just what I needed during these trying times of the 2020 pandemic. Keep encouraging and inspiring. Thank you so much, Destiny, for your willingness to encourage and inspire other beacons by sharing your review. And hey, Beacon, this is for you. If you haven't yet shared a review, please do, because when you do share a review, you create an opportunity for other beacons to find this show and the community and get the goods that they need to thrive on this here bounce back journey. That said, let me remind you that the invitation still stands for you to join us over in the private Bounce Back Blueprint community. What are you waiting for? You are missing out on Testimony Tuesdays, deep dive discussions into the episodes, live clarity coaching, and so much more in store. So grab the link in the show notes and join us over in the community. Now, let's get into building the blueprint. I'm so excited to have you back with us this week as we continue to build the blueprint. And today is really, really special because we have an amazing guest, and that is the phenomenal Jasmene Bowdry. And I'm going to give you her bio before we bring her on. So Jasmene Bowdry is a fashion and retail leader with over 12 years of experience from corporate companies to entrepreneurial endeavors. She is the owner of SHIFT StyleHouse, a contemporary clothing boutique for the modern Renaissance woman. Jasmene prides herself on being formally educated in the fashion world and experientially educated in the entrepreneurial world. She is known for her clear-cut and focused teaching approach for building successful retail businesses. In 2018, Jasmene launched the Boutique Teacher alongside her signature program, Breakout Fashionista, where she serves emerging boutique owners. Without further ado, I give you all and welcome to our show, Jasmene Bowdry. Hey girl, hey.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing so well. I'm so glad that you are here and we have
Oh,
this time
thank
to
you for
chat.
having me.
I know the ladies are going to be blessed by what you have to share. Before we dig in, can you let our listeners know who you are beyond the bio, which I must say was a very, very modest bio?
You're so funny. So hey y'all, Jasmine Bowdry here. I just like to say I do all things fashion. If it's in the fashion lane, then I either do it or I've done it. So, I spent most of my corporate career as a retail buyer for brands like Saks, Tiffany, Sears, Office Depot, and other Fortune 500 retail companies as a retail buyer. I've done celebrity styling. I've done a few things in my lifetime. I'll say that
None of
that I
which
guess
was in the bio,
that
but
I
we'll
guess
deal with that
are
later.
pretty dope. In 2016, I launched my own clothing boutique, Shift Style House, that has been featured in Macy's, worn by Tyra Banks, Sarah Jakes Roberts, and others. So
Also
definitely
not in
have
the
been
bio.
definitely definitely have been blessed. I'll say that. Definitely have been blessed in this journey. for sure.
I would have to agree. And like I said, her bio was very modest, but you'll hear during the conversation how amazing she is. So Jasmine and I actually met, I want to say here in Pittsburgh at a conference, but we've had the opportunity to be at a couple of different conferences speaking. So I think it was at Hustle Her Way that
Yep.
we met.
Yep.
And I think that was not long after you had launched Shift and were getting like all of the major play Macy's. I remember the announcement about Macy's coming out and your stuff being there. So that is awesome. But I think what is even more awesome, especially right now with the season that we are in with the Rona ruining a whole lot of things, that your business continues to thrive. And so I would like for you to share about how you've been able to maintain the growth of your business, even in the midst of so many businesses crumbling, especially retail businesses.
Yeah, honestly, it's been such a blessing, and I definitely give all glory to God for that, because when the pandemic first started, so it was like January. You kind of January is always a slow month for retail anyway, so I wasn't too taken aback by it being slow, because it's typically always slow. However, um shipments started to be delayed. So then it was kind of like, what's going on? Why is everything, why is everything inventory, being delayed? And then when March happened, it was like, okay, what's really going on? And how is this going to impact business? Because, the first thing you think of is that shopping is not a like that's not something that's necessary, that people have to do. But
Right.
I would say for me is that I had to shift my mindset in that time to stop counting my customers' pockets. And I think that that's what a lot of people do is they try to count their customers' pockets. Well, people are getting laid off, but is your customers getting laid off? And
Right.
my audience, because I know who my audience is, they weren't necessarily seeing that impact. Like the shift that happened was them now having to work from home. So
Right.
I was able to sustain business by shifting to then what they needed, which was more work from home styles. So bringing in more, comfort wear, more kind of lounge clothing that they could still, feel comfortable in, but still be presentable, on their Zoom meetings. So that went really well. Again, people were continuing to shop. And then come, I want to say June, July is when, we've been in this unrest of, the with our men in our community dying, women in our community dying. And so I'm like, how can I state a message through what I love, which is fashion? So then I dropped a line of of t-shirts that that really had statements on them, and those did phenomenally well, because again,
Oh,
sometimes
good.
you don't necessarily have the words to say, and so the shirt says it for you. And so those did really well. So for me, it was thinking outside of the box, honestly, thinking of things that were going on and how my business could help to still, serve that. So I would say that's how it has continued, to grow as we go into fall and holiday. Although we still are in a pandemic, I live in Atlanta. Atlanta is just all the way open. And so, we shut down for 2 weeks, and that was it. People like, okay, bye. So, people are still going places, even though it's socially distant. So now it's kind of like back on, my regular type of, fashion that I would normally offer my audience. And that's doing well. Again, because, some of them are like, yeah, we'll be socially distant, but I still want to be cute. So
Right, right. So I think it's interesting that you were able to take that step back and say, okay, this is what's happening. Let me think about how I can respond versus reacting. And I'm curious,
exactly.
I know in your bio, you said you've been in the business for about 12 years. And so I'm curious as to what kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, pandemics you've experienced over the course of your career that gave you the foresight to be able to take that position the way you took it, as opposed to, oh my God, what should I do?
Right.
This is going to be the end of my business.
So great question. So I think retail is always up and down. So that is the industry of, of retail. And so I think being a buyer in that, where, not only are you responding to the up and down of retail, I've worked at companies where we have to be able to respond quickly to national disasters, hurricanes and things like that, where you have to work quickly to get your customers what they need in that time. So I remember the last company I was working for, it was during, I can't remember what hurricane it was, but it was one of the bad ones. And so they needed batteries, they needed water, they needed, and I was the buyer for some of these categories. So it's, being able to, again, kind of maneuver and think of what can I do in this time that's going to get my customer, what they need. But I think honestly, just understanding that retail is always up and down, and you have to act quickly when it's these changes. A lot of businesses didn't make it through the pandemic because they were afraid to pivot, and they were afraid to, try new things. And that's something that I've never been afraid to do in business. It's like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work, then, it doesn't work, but you have to at least try. And so a lot of entrepreneurs are scared to try new things. And I think being a buyer in my past life, that's always taking risks, because it's taking risk with new brands, with new vendors, with new products, and trying it to see how it does in the store. So I've never necessarily been afraid to try something new to see how it's gonna work.
I think it's really important to stick a pin in the truth that I already know that entrepreneurship in any area is a faith walk, right? It's a risk.
Right.
But I feel like it's a double risk. It's even more of a faith walk in the retail space. So you already had to have some stamina to even consider becoming a retail business owner. But I'm curious about, like you said, you had to know how to pivot. What was it that pushed you into pivoting from the corporate space into the entrepreneurial space?
Yeah, so I started Shift while I was still working in corporate, and it really was just where I wasn't feeling fulfilled in my roles. I wasn't. It was like it was something. It was something, and I didn't. And I felt it at a few of my previous jobs, where after a while I'm like, okay, this is boring, or I've reached as far as I'm going to go here, or I've learned what I've learned here, move on to the next. And I always thought it was something wrong with me. And I'm like, am I just like a person? Like, why don't I like being in this space? And I've always been, that the one that, now people would say, okay, well, where you would be called the angry Black woman for speaking out, and I was always very vocal in my career. I was very vocal if I didn't agree with something. I was very vocal if something didn't make any sense. And it was always where I felt like I was in a box. Like, I can't, like, these people don't get me. They don't understand. They don't see the vision. They don't want to try all of that. And so when I started to explore entrepreneurship, it was because I'm not fulfilled. I don't see myself being at this place for 40, plus years. So what else is out there, and how can I merge what I do love, what I do, have such a passion for? How can I merge that? And so once I saw that kind of this space of online, fashion was booming, and it was not as saturated as it is now, but it was where a lot of people were doing it. And I was like, well, I know these people don't have the background that I have, so if they can figure it out, then I know I should be able to figure it out as well. And that's really, what sparked me into it. And then as I grew more and got deeper into it, then it was like, okay, this is something that I can do, for life, because it's always changing. I'm never bored. Right. It's always something, it's always something to do that can be done. There's always something to learn. And there's just so much, opportunity. There's no glass ceiling. There's no waiting around for an annual review to get a 3%, increase. Right. So I like that freedom.
Okay. So with the freedom, of course, came a lot of challenges. And I already know the story, but I want you to take our audience back a little bit to the season where you had your own kind of personal pandemic in the midst of the journey to getting to where Shift is now and all of the other amazing things that you do is now. Can you talk a little bit about your journey and the
Yeah,
transition?
of course. So, dating, I'll start back in Brooklyn. And so when I was, working in corporate, again, feeling unfulfilled, having a boss that was just super disrespectful, just wondering what am I going to do. I just fell into a really depressed state. And I had quit the job because again, it just wasn't healthy, but I didn't have a backup plan. And they always say don't quit unless you have a plan. And I did not have one. And so I fell into the state of depression where I was completely broke. I could not afford to take the train. And in New York, the train was at that time like 125 each way. And I couldn't even get to job interviews. And so
Wow.
it was just a really bad time, like where do I go from here? Like that, that was the bottom. And all I could afford to eat, all I had was a Folgers, big tin of Folgers coffee and bread and peanut butter and jelly. And that's literally what I ate every day, all day for weeks.
Wow.
Couldn't pay my rent, was getting eviction notices. It was bad. It was really bad. And so that was my lowest of the low, and just really being in that space and trying to come out of that, like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Because you can't, you're either gonna, it's one or two options. You're either gonna crawl out of it or you're gonna kill yourself. So what are we doing? And suicide is something that has happened a few times in my family, and so I know that's not something that I would want to do to my family, but the thoughts were definitely there. And so it was where I had to crawl out of that hole. So I ended up going to grad school. I didn't necessarily want to be back in school, but it was definitely the scapegoat to kind of help me restructure, whatever my life was going to become. So I ended up getting my MBA, going to grad school, and then going back into the corporate space.
But
Now,
how
fast
did
forward.
you wait, let me stop you real quick. How did
Yeah.
you even get yourself to the point that you could pursue the grad school opportunity? Like how did you
Yep.
get yourself out of that hole? Because
Yeah,
depression is a deep hole.
right. So I think I had applied like the previous year. So I had already been
Okay.
accepted.
Okay, so it
I
was
had
already in
already been
process.
accepted. Yeah, I had already been accepted. It was just I didn't know if I wanted to actually go. So I had
Okay.
already been accepted. And again, just realizing like nothing, I was applying for so many jobs, like nothing was coming, because this was also during the last the financial pandemic. So this was, during the last economic shutdown that we had. So 2008, 2009. So
Mm-hmm.
it was where nobody, there weren't any jobs to even get. So I couldn't get anything. And literally school was like the only option, because I knew that, okay, I can get a financial aid check.
Right.
This I can pause, different bills and things coming in based on now being a student.
Right.
So it literally was kind of like, like a light bulb, like, hey, well, you applied for going to grad school last year. Maybe you now need to explore this more.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so that's kind of how, how that happened. And so yeah, and the thing is, because I remember anytime I talk about this, my mom is like, I just like, I didn't know you were going. So, it wasn't something that my family, knew, because my family is super supportive, and I'm sure that they would have helped as much as they could. But
Right.
it's where you are. I'm an adult. I don't
Right.
want, to call my mama. I don't want to have to have them bail me out, essentially, especially because I felt like it was something I created because I left the job.
Right. So it's a combination of that pride, but also just like wanting to empower yourself to get out of it.
Exactly.
Okay. So
Yep.
we in grad school now.
Yeah. So after grad school, again, kind of going back to the corporate buying space. So as I was getting my MBA, it was in finance, just because buying, you deal a lot with numbers, and I felt like that was that was a good thing to transition into. Also, I was like, okay, I can get a 6-figure job when I leave grad school, and none of that happened. Like none of that happened. It's so funny because you have all these plans, and God be like, nope. And so like my GPA was high. I can't even think of it was like the whatever the honor society was for grad school.
Mm-hmm.
I was in that. I was one of the scholarship recipients for the National Black MBA. And so it was like, I was like, oh, I know I'm set after
you was killing the game.
After I leave school. I know I'm gonna have all the job offers. And I did not at all. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so going back to, again, my background, it was like, well, I know I can get a job back in corporate, retail buying. So let's just do that. And so then I was on that path, I want to say, for at least 7-8 years.
Okay.
That I got back into that, and then realizing, okay, this is not, I can't do this. And so that's when I started SHIFT. But even through that, I got fired. So in 2018, as my business started to grow, and I always think that, companies, they always say they want people with entrepreneurial spirits. They don't really mean it.
They don't.
They always say it because when you show that entrepreneur, it's like they don't really want you to be an entrepreneur. They don't really want you to have other things going on outside of work.
They want you to be an intrapreneur.
Exactly. Like they say you can have work-life balance, but not really.
Not really, no. They don't value
so as my business started to grow, my performance never did. I have always been the type of employee that I don't feed into the corporate, culture. I'm not going to the happy hours. I'm here to work. Like this is a job. This is my livelihood. This is a check. And because I know that anytime you can get rid of me, so there are so many people that, get tied all into
living their jobs,
companies, and I'm like, yeah, that's not me. It's never been. And so people don't, they didn't like that. So I would, even though my numbers were performing well, I would never get promoted because I was told you need to build more relationships. A lot of people don't know much about you. Well, you know what these numbers are producing. You just don't know about me personally. And that's what you want to know. And that's what I'm not giving. And so, so there was conflict there where it's kind of like, I should probably start making a plan to get out of here. And so that's what I, started to do was create this plan. I had a 6-month plan that, I would leave corporate and move to Atlanta and, do entrepreneurship full time. Like the business was growing, more opportunities were coming, and there were some things that I couldn't do because, I had a corporate. I remember I got, chosen to be, it was going to be some type of like entrepreneur, not a reality show, but some type of entrepreneur showcase that was going to be like on national television. I couldn't go because I couldn't fly to Atlanta like during the week because I had to go to work and I didn't have any vacation days left. So I was like, I didn't like that. I didn't like being restricted to not being able to do stuff because I have to be here at work. And so any vacation time I did have, it was always to travel for trade shows, meetings with vendors, things like that. And so I remember coming back from being on vacation, and my boss had sent me an email while I was on vacation, and something didn't get done, or she couldn't find a file. And so she had emailed me on vacation asking about this file, and I didn't reply until I got back. Hello, vacation. And so, when I replied back, like, well, I was on vacation, but the file was in X drive, blah, blah, blah. She did not like that. And, she had a conversation with me of telling me that business doesn't stop when I'm on vacation, and they couldn't get what they needed. And, vacation is not something that the company has to give to you. And I was like, well, that's in my contract. Yes, it is.
Wow.
Like, yes, I do have vacation days, and I'm going to use them, and I am not going to work while I'm on vacation. We aren't saving lives. We aren't doctors. Nobody's dying because you couldn't find this file. And clearly you were okay because you made it until I came back on Monday.
Right.
And so, there was just, I didn't like that it got aggressive to where she had began to slam her hands on the desk, and me being who I am, I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna have to choke my boss. Like, that's how this is gonna go. And I'm like, I gotta get out of here, because this is not gonna end well for anybody, because
you was gonna be on the news.
That side, like, yeah, you don't know her, and you don't want her to come out. And so I was like, wow. And then what really caught me was that I immediately went to HR to report the issue. Like, I don't, she was slamming her hand on the desk. I don't, that's not how a manager is supposed to act, just because I didn't reply to an email. If it was an emergency,
on vacation,
send a text, like, text me. And the HR woman said, well, I think you should go back and apologize and tell her that, you can text me. It's okay. And I'm like,
what?
No, we're not doing that. And so, like, I'm like, wow, like, y'all are crazy. And that's really just what I began to think, is like, y'all are really crazy. And then on top of that, her boss, when I got back to my desk, had sent me an email like, can you come see me? And I'm like, oh, here we really go. And then he was like, I don't think anybody's ever told their boss that they can't check something on vacation. Everybody comes in here with the obligation to do X. And I'm like, are you seriously? And basically made me out to be the problem. I was told that nobody else on the team has ever had issues with her. So you're indicating that I'm the problem because I now have an issue. And, she's somebody that was highly regarded in the company. And so obviously now I look like I am the cause of all these issues. So from that point, I knew, I was like, oh yeah, it's time, it's time to go.
How far into your 6-month plan were you at that point?
Girl, 2 months in, okay? 2. And so literally 2 weeks, I think, after that incident happened, I got fired. And it was where I was told some mess that they had made up of, different scenarios in which they felt I wasn't a good fit for the company. And
well, clearly, because their values were
I'm like,
trash.
So yeah, it was like where they made up all of these things. And I'm just looking like, there is so much that I could say here. There's so much that I could do to try to combat this thought process and the overall structure of this company. But I was just like, okay. Like, I was just like, okay, I was at peace with the decision, because I was like, this is for a reason. Now, God, I don't know why, because we had a 6-month plan. And literally, I'm like, we had a 6-month plan, Lord. I was trying to wait. You do
realize we only on month 2.
Like, I was trying to wait for the bonus check. Like, what? Why?
He was like, I'm your bonus check.
He was like, yeah, girl, no, we gonna get you out of here right now. And so I got fired on a Monday, and that Thursday is when Tyra Banks was in one of my pieces on Watch What Happens Live with Andy on Bravo. Wow. So to me, that was like the first sign of, okay,
this is a real deal.
Like, you're gonna be okay, right? And so from there, it was really just a series of blessings after blessings after blessings, because then it was, then it was Macy's, then it was being featured in XO Nicole, being featured in Voyage ATL, being featured in Sheen Magazine, going on Sister Circle TV. So it was like all of these things that happened because I still moved to Atlanta despite, me not having the savings that I wanted to have prior to moving here. I still came, and all these doors, kind of opened as a result of me just, keeping faith that everything is going to work out. So it is still, it's still a faith journey. It continues to be a faith walk for sure. But I can say that, God has truly kept me in that time. So come, November 29th, it'll be 2 years that I've been, full-time entrepreneurship. And I didn't think I was going to make it 1 year. So.
So what would you say has been the biggest challenge? Because that was a lot. First, leaving a job, then being told to leave a job, and then this transition to a completely new city and state.
Yeah. I would say the biggest challenge again is kind of, I think, getting out of your own way. So me getting, out of my own head and really leaning into this is what you're supposed to be doing. Because I'll say that I applied for jobs after that, like after getting fired. I was still trying to go back because I was so used to that, that cushion, that consistent. Right. I know that, on the first and the 15th, I'm going to get, X amount. And so right. I was still even trying to go back after that and could not either get interviews or, did not get offers. And so it was like, God kept smacking me like, girl, I keep telling you that this is not what we're doing. Like, this is not what we're doing. I need you to stay on this path over here. And so I think, again, my biggest challenge has been, realizing and leaning into this is what you're supposed to be doing. And although you don't know every step, that's ahead of you, just know that your steps, they're already ordered. Like it's already going to work out because it's already ordered.
So it's been a very real-time journey and learning to trust God and let him lead. Because one of the things that I hear you that you keep saying is like a plan. Like I had this plan, I had this plan.
I was a plan. I was a plan type person. Like that has always been my personality, is like, well, what's the plan? What do we have a plan? What's the
timeline?
What's the timeline? Where, what are we doing? Where are we going? So yeah. So, and that has been, that has been a struggle. And that's something that, I talk to God about and pray about is me trusting, him more, because it's funny because there was a prophetic word over me that spoke to that and was like, you always be trying to fight God, like it like literally, like there are some trust issue where y'all butt heads, and we do. And I'm a stubborn person, so I'm like, nope, like. But but that's where I realized that, that's where I need. And so that's where, what I pray for is like, God, help me to trust you more, because I know that you are able. I know that you can, but just help me to get out of my own head and this molding that I've always had of having to have a plan for everything.
Yes. I always say, if you get into a wrestling match with God and you're winning, you are losing.
Oh yeah, losing.
In the moment, it's like, oh yeah, I got him. But then it's like, really?
Like,
you can't. That's not a fight you can win.
Like, I'm not gonna win.
So I know now that you are growing and teaching other new and existing boutique owners to be successful and build their businesses. And I'm curious as to how you impart the lessons you've learned personally and professionally into them, so that they don't have the experiences specifically around like that control piece as well.
Yeah. So I started my coaching program, Breakout Fashionista, in 2017. And when I first launched it, like nobody signed up, nobody enrolled. And so again, continuing the journey, even though, nobody was on lives, nobody was signing up, nobody was downloading freebies or anything. Still continuing that. And what I realized was that people get what they need through me, and honestly it's God speaking through me. It's his voice coming through me, with me sharing my story. And so it's me sharing all those struggles, sharing, the hard times. I know what it was like when the Shopify didn't have sales coming in. And so I share that to be able to use that to teach, my clients and those that don't, work with me directly, but just sharing, my story of that it's not, it's not always going to be like that if you continue the path. Like if you don't quit whatever this, this vision, this journey is that you have for your business. And so for me, it's just been where it's being more comfortable with sharing and being more vulnerable and sharing, my ups and downs that I've experienced in my growth in entrepreneurship. Because, even though now it's like, okay, yes, like I've just enrolled the largest group that I have before. I've, had
congratulations.
Thank you, my best-selling month. Even in that, it's still a journey, because like I said, in 2017, 2018, the beginning of 2018, nobody signed up. And so it's being able to see that, hey, like it's not something that happens overnight. And that's what, I really try to share, is that this is not like if this is something, if you want to start a boutique, or you want to start a boutique business, and you think that like results are going to happen like immediately, then this may not be what you want to do, because it doesn't.
Period. It's just not going to happen that fast. I'm curious though, like you said, in 2017, 2018, things weren't popping, but you were consistently getting that message from God, like this is it. This is the thing. And so how did you balance your faith and your need for control and making sure you had that coin? Like, how did you balance that?
Right. It was hard because it was where it's like I felt it, like I know this is it, like I know my skill set, I know my expertise in this space. Other people just don't know it yet. Like,
right.
Like I've been here, y'all just don't know about me yet, but you will eventually if I just keep doing it. And so it was, finding, like I had to cash out my 401k to, to be able to sustain and pay bills. It was, cutting down on things. Like I'm not really but I used to travel and, do a lot of, like fun things. And so it's like, you have to make some sacrifices there in the times that you need, to make them in order to maintain, honestly. And so that was really just, what I had to do. There were unexpected blessings that, that would come in, where when they first were doing the stimulus checks, right? Because it was based on your, what are we in 2020?
Was it your 2018 or 2019 tax return?
I think it was 2018, which is when I was still in corporate. So based off that, I shouldn't have got anything because I was over the amount. And so I got a check and I was like, wow. Like, so it was like unexpected. It was, friends who didn't know anything that was going on, but a good friend of mine was like, hey, I have a position where I need some help, doing some things in my business. Like, are you available to help? And I'm like, yeah, I am. Mm-hmm. So it was like, all of these kind of unexpected things that came that helped to sustain, just so I could stay afloat, that really came at the right time.
All of those things that, like you said, God was ordering along the way, even when you weren't really sure, he already had it worked out.
Exactly. Yep.
So what would you say to the person who's kind of in a transition, who's in the midst of a pivot, even in the midst of this pandemic, who's like 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because they hear God, but also it's a pandemic and they're afraid?
Honestly, it's you got to do it scared, and I know that is cliche. I know that we hear, do it scared anyway. But if you hear that from God, meaning that he's telling you, you feel it in your heart, then you have to do it, because that feeling is never gonna go away until
This is true.
until you actually lean into it and do it. You're always gonna feel that, well, what if, and what if. And I think what you'll start to see when you don't do it is that you'll see that other people who are doing it, who aren't as qualified, are gonna be
Jesus
blessed and all of this other stuff. And you look like, but I know I can do that better. I know, but he can't bless you because you haven't stepped out in it yet. You haven't put that other foot in. So, when I say do it scared, that's where I'm coming from with do it scared, because if you don't, then you're gonna see other people keep getting blessed with your blessing
and passing you by.
Yep.
And I think the key to piggyback off of that is to continue to do it scared. Because after you take the first step, there's going to be another step to take.
Oh, exactly.
It takes a while to get to a point where the next step is not a scared step. So you have to consistently do it scared.
You have to keep doing it scared. It's where it doesn't stop. It hasn't. I don't think that there is a place where I'm comfortable yet, and I don't know if I necessarily want to get. I want to get to a comfortable place, but I don't, because I feel like when I am uncomfortable, that's when the biggest shifts and the biggest growth actually happen. So not to say don't take gratitude for where you are and what you have, but if you feel, the key word is, if you feel that, if you know that God is speaking to you and he's telling you to do something, then you have to do it.
Right. So it's like that balance with being content, but not becoming complacent.
Exactly.
It's a tough space to get to, though.
Yeah.
It's a lot of mindset work.
Oh yeah.
But I agree. Oh yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. It's definitely mindset, because if you get too comfortable, then you do find yourself complacent and you're back in that cycle of watching everybody else pass you by. Yeah, I agree. Well, I can tell you that I've been watching your journey. I guess that would have been since 2018. Seems like it's longer than that. But I definitely think that whether someone is interested in retail or the boutique space, that you are a person, especially if you are a woman of faith in business, a great person to be connected to, a great person to follow on social media, because the social media streets can get messy. Yeah. But I definitely appreciate the level of transparency that you continue to share. I do miss the Java with Jazz, just throwing that out there.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. I need to, that's so funny, because it's like I forgot about that. I need to.
That was good.
I need to bring that back. Let me write that down.
Write that down. Yes, write that down. So yes, I want to make sure that you let our listeners know where they can find you, whether they're interested in learning more about the boutique side of things, or just gleaning the gems that you are consistently dropping about the entrepreneurial journey itself.
Definitely follow on Instagram at Jasmene Bowdry, Jasmene Bowdry. That's literally where I share, pretty much everything. And from there are links that, go to the boutique. There are links that, go to my coaching, all of that stuff. So definitely follow me on Instagram at Jasmene Bowdry.
All right, I have 2 more questions. I'm going to let you go. The first is, when will you be writing a book about this journey?
Oh my goodness. You are like this is not the first time I have heard this. So I think it's a book in there somewhere, because I've heard it a few times, and I felt it. So I was like, Lord, you trying to make me an author?
Yes, perhaps this is just a reconfirmation for you then.
Right. Yes. So yeah, so that we'll see.
Write that down. And then my last question, of course, is just what scripture or quote or words of encouragement would you recommend to the women who are listening and on the journey to consistently do it afraid?
Yeah, I'll always go back to I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I'll always go back to that because that is my source and that is my strength. And so I know that whatever, I'm going through in the good and the bad, that I am going to come out of it eventually.
Right.
Because I know that, I can do all things through him. So that will forever be, what sustains me.
Well, I feel like that's a mic drop moment right there. Thank you so much for taking the time to bless
Thank you
the
for having
community
me.
with your story and sharing. And like I said, keep doing what you're doing. It's definitely blessing people, especially the ones who never tell you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes, likewise. All right. There you have it. This is how you get unstuck. And I pray that you are clinging tightly to the last thing Jasmine left us with, and that is that no matter what it looks like, no matter what you're going through, you can always stand firm on the truth that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. And my prayer, first and foremost, is that he strengthens you to do two things. First, leave a review if this episode was a blessing to you. And second, grab the link in the show notes and join us over in the Bounce Back Blueprint community so we can go a little bit deeper into all of the gems that were dropped during this episode. And of course, I will leave you with this. God is not going to play you, but if you are not trusting that you can do all things through him, I promise you are playing yourself. Be blessed.